Mecca, Saudi Arabia, April 20th, 1964, 2 a.m. Malcolm X sits in his hotel room, unable to sleep. Outside, the call to prayer echoes across the holy city. Inside, his mind is racing. Everything he's believed for 12 years, everything he's taught, everything he's preached has been turned upside down. He's just witnessed something impossible. White people and black people praying together. As equals. As brothers. He reaches for a pen and paper. Begins to write. My pilgrimage to Mecca has been a spiritual rebirth. This is the letter that changed everything. Let's back up. It's April 1964. Malcolm X has just left the Nation of Islam. After 12 years as their most prominent spokesman, he's broken away. The split is bitter, ugly, personal. Elijah Muhammad, the leader Malcolm once revered as a prophet, has been exposed as a fraud. A man who preached moral purity while fathering children with multiple secretaries. A man who preached black supremacy while living in luxury. Malcolm is devastated. Disillusioned. Everything he's believed, everything he's taught, has been built on lies. But there's something else, something deeper. For 12 years, Malcolm has preached that white people are devils, that integration is impossible, that black people must separate completely from white society. He said things like, "The white man is the devil. We don't want integration. We want a separation. The only way for black people to be free is to have our own nation." These aren't just political positions. They're religious beliefs, core to his identity, core to his understanding of the world. But now, free from the Nation of Islam, Malcolm is questioning everything, and he decides to do something he's never done before. Go to Mecca. The Hajj, the pilgrimage to Mecca, is one of the 5 pillars of Islam. Every Muslim who is able is supposed to make the journey at least once in their lifetime. Malcolm has been a Muslim for 12 years, but he's never been to Mecca. The Nation of Islam discouraged it. They said their version of Islam was pure, that traditional Islam was corrupted. But now Malcolm wants to see for himself. He applies for a visa, gets his vaccinations, studies Arabic, prepares for the journey. On April 13th, 1964, he boards a plane in New York. Destination, Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. The flight takes 20 hours. Malcolm has time to think, to reflect, to wonder what he'll find. He arrives in Jeddah, exhausted, disoriented, culture shocked, but also excited. For the first time in months, he feels hopeful. Malcolm's first challenge comes immediately. At the airport in Jeddah, Saudi officials question his credentials. They've never heard of the Nation of Islam. They don't recognize Malcolm's version of Islam as legitimate. He's detained, questioned, for hours. Finally, a Saudi official who speaks English explains the problem. Your organization, this Nation of Islam, it's not recognized here. We don't know if you're a real Muslim. Malcolm is frustrated, embarrassed, but also curious. What do you mean, real Muslim? Islam is one religion, one faith. There are no separate versions for different races. A Muslim is a Muslim. This is the first crack in Malcolm's worldview. Eventually, Malcolm's credentials are verified. He's allowed to proceed to Mecca. But the real shock comes when he begins the Hajj itself. The Hajj requires all pilgrims to wear the same simple white garments. 2 pieces of unstitched cloth. No jewelry, no status symbols. No way to distinguish rich from poor, famous from unknown, black from white. Malcolm puts on the white robes, looks around, and sees something that stops him cold. Muslims of every race, every nationality, every color. White Muslims from Europe, black Muslims from Africa, Arab Muslims from the Middle East, Asian Muslims from Indonesia and Malaysia, all dressed the same, all performing the same rituals, all equal before God. Malcolm has never seen anything like it. For 12 years, he's preached that white people are inherently evil, that they can't change, that they're incapable of treating black people as equals. But here, in Mecca, he sees white Muslims treating him, a black man, with genuine respect, genuine brotherhood. A white Muslim from Bosnia approaches him. "Assalamu alaikum, brother." "Peace be upon you, brother." Malcolm responds automatically. "Wa alaikum assalam." "And upon you, peace." They pray together, eat together, sleep in the same tent. The white man doesn't see Malcolm's color. Malcolm doesn't see the man's whiteness. They see each other as Muslims, as brothers. This happens again and again, with white Muslims from Turkey, from Albania, from Russia. Malcolm is shaken, confused. Everything he's believed is being challenged. On the third day of the Hajj, Malcolm participates in the ritual of standing at Mount Arafat. 2 million pilgrims gather on the plain, praying, reflecting, seeking forgiveness. Malcolm looks out at the sea of humanity. Every race, every nationality, united in faith. And he realizes something profound. The problem isn't white people. The problem is white supremacy, the system, the ideology. Individual white people, when freed from that system, can be brothers, can be allies, can be human. That night, back in his hotel room, Malcolm can't sleep. His mind is racing. Everything he's taught, everything he's believed. It's not wrong, exactly, but it's incomplete. He needs to process this, to understand it, to share it. So he picks up a pen and begins to write. The letter Malcolm writes is extraordinary, not just for what it says, but for what it represents. A complete transformation, a public admission that he was wrong. A new vision for the civil rights movement, he writes. Never have I witnessed such sincere hospitality and overwhelming spirit of true brotherhood as is practiced by people of all colors and races here in this ancient holy land, the home of Abraham, Muhammad, and all the other prophets of the Holy Scriptures. This is revolutionary. For 12 years, Malcolm has preached that true brotherhood between races is impossible. He continues, "For the past week, I have been utterly speechless and spellbound by the graciousness I see displayed all around me by people of all colors. I have been blessed to visit the holy city of Mecca. I have made my 7 circuits around the Kaaba, led by a young mutawaf named Muhammad. I drank water from the well of Zamzam. I ran 7 times back and forth between the hills of Mount al-Safa and al-Marwa. I have prayed in the ancient city of Mina, and I have prayed on Mount Arafat." These are the rituals of the Hajj. Malcolm is establishing his credentials, proving that he's experienced true Islam. But then comes the bombshell. There were tens of thousands of pilgrims from all over the world. They were of all colors, from blue-eyed blondes to black-skinned Africans. But we were all participating in the same ritual, displaying a spirit of unity and brotherhood that my experiences in America had led me to believe never could exist between the white and non-white. This is Malcolm admitting he was wrong, publicly, completely. He goes further. America needs to understand Islam, because this is the one religion that erases from its society the race problem. Throughout my travels in the Muslim world, I have met, talked to, and even eaten with people who in America would have been considered white. But the white attitude was removed from their minds by the religion of Islam. This is a direct repudiation of everything Malcolm has taught for 12 years. But he's not done. I have never before seen sincere and true brotherhood practiced by all colors together, irrespective of their color. You may be shocked by these words coming from me, but on this pilgrimage, what I have seen and experienced has forced me to rearrange much of my thought patterns previously held, and to toss aside some of my previous conclusions. Malcolm is acknowledging that this letter will shock people, that it contradicts everything he's said before, but he's committed to truth, even when it's uncomfortable. The letter continues for 800 words. Malcolm describes his experiences in detail, his conversations with white Muslims, his realization that the problem isn't race, it's racism. He ends with this: if white Americans could accept the oneness of God, then perhaps too they could accept in reality the oneness of man, and cease to measure and hinder and harm others in terms of their differences in color. With all my heart, El Hajj Malik El Shabazz, Malcolm X. Malcolm signs the letter with his new name, El Hajj Malik El Shabazz, the name he took after completing the Hajj. It's symbolic. The old Malcolm, the one who preached separation, is gone. The new Malcolm, the one who believes in unity, has been born. Malcolm sends the letter to his assistant in New York, with instructions to share it with the media. The letter is published in newspapers across America. It's read on television. It's discussed in churches, in universities, in living rooms. The reaction is explosive. Some people are inspired. They see Malcolm's transformation as proof that people can change, that reconciliation is possible. Others are angry. Malcolm's followers in the Nation of Islam feel betrayed. They accuse him of selling out, of being brainwashed by white Muslims. White supremacists are furious. They preferred the old Malcolm, the one who preached separation. The new Malcolm, who talks about unity, is more dangerous to their cause. But the most important reaction comes from the mainstream civil rights movement. For years, Malcolm has been seen as the radical alternative to Martin Luther King Jr., the angry voice to King's peaceful one, the separatist to King's integrationist. But now, with this letter, Malcolm is moving closer to King's position. Not completely. Malcolm still believes in self-defense, still criticizes white liberals, but closer. King himself reads the letter. He's cautiously optimistic. I'm glad to see Malcolm moving in this direction, he tells an aide. If he continues on this path, we might be able to work together. Other civil rights leaders are more skeptical. They remember Malcolm's years of attacks on the movement. They wonder if this transformation is real or strategic. But Malcolm is sincere. When he returns to America in May 1964, he begins reaching out to other civil rights leaders. He speaks at universities. He gives interviews. And in every speech, every interview, he references the letter, the experience in Mecca, the realization that unity is possible. 3 months after writing the letter, Malcolm is invited to speak at a civil rights rally in Harlem. It's organized by mainstream civil rights groups, the same groups Malcolm has criticized for years. He accepts. At the rally, Malcolm speaks to a crowd of 5,000 people, black and white, young and old, Christians and Muslims. He talks about Mecca, about the letter, about his transformation. I'm not the same man who left America 3 months ago, he says. I've seen things that have changed my perspective. I've learned that the problem isn't white people. The problem is white supremacy. And that's a problem we can solve together. The crowd erupts in applause. For the first time in years, Malcolm and the mainstream civil rights movement are on the same side. But Malcolm's transformation comes at a cost. The Nation of Islam, led by Elijah Muhammad, sees Malcolm's letter as a betrayal. They begin threatening him, harassing him, planning his assassination. On February 21, 1965, less than a year after writing the letter from Mecca, Malcolm X is gunned down while speaking at the Audubon Ballroom in Harlem. He's 39 years old. But the letter lives on. In the days after Malcolm's assassination, the letter is republished in newspapers around the world. It's read at memorial services. It's quoted by civil rights leaders. Martin Luther King Jr., speaking at Malcolm's funeral, references the letter. Malcolm was a man who was constantly growing. He was willing to change his mind when presented with new evidence. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. The letter becomes part of Malcolm's legacy, proof that even the most radical positions can evolve, that even the deepest prejudices can be overcome. Decades later, the letter is still studied in schools, still quoted by activists, still cited as an example of personal transformation, because it represents something powerful: the courage to admit you were wrong, and the wisdom to change. What's the lesson? Malcolm X spent 12 years preaching one thing. Then, in a single week in Mecca, he realized he was wrong. And instead of doubling down, instead of defending his old position, he had the courage to change. That's not easy. Admitting you're wrong, especially publicly, especially when you've built your reputation on being right, takes incredible courage. But Malcolm did it because he valued truth more than ego, growth more than consistency. Here's what he understood. Wisdom isn't about never being wrong. It's about being willing to change when you discover you are. We live in a world that punishes people for changing their minds. We call it flip-flopping. We say people are inconsistent. We act like changing your position is a sign of weakness. But Malcolm's letter from Mecca shows us the opposite. Changing your mind, when presented with new evidence, new experiences, new understanding, isn't weakness, it's growth. So let me ask you this. What beliefs are you holding on to that might be wrong? What positions have you taken that new evidence might challenge? What prejudices might you have that new experiences could change? Because here's the truth Malcolm learned in Mecca. The world is bigger and more complex than any of us realize. And the moment we stop learning, stop growing, stop changing, that's the moment we stop living. Malcolm could have gone to Mecca and seen what he expected to see. He could have ignored the evidence that challenged his beliefs. He could have returned to America unchanged, but he didn't. He opened his mind, he opened his heart, and he let the experience transform him. That transformation didn't just change Malcolm's life. It changed the civil rights movement. It changed history. Because when someone with Malcolm's influence, Malcolm's platform, Malcolm's credibility admits they were wrong and charts a new course, it gives everyone else permission to do the same. Malcolm X's letter from Mecca is more than a historical document. It's a blueprint for personal transformation, a guide for how to change your mind with grace, a reminder that growth requires the courage to admit you don't have all the answers. Malcolm learned that in Mecca in 1964. And 60 years later, the lesson still stands. Be willing to be wrong. Be willing to change. Be willing to grow. Because that's not just how you become a better person. That's how you change the world.